So, what is factorizing? It's when we take a quadratic like this, a to the x squared plus bx plus c, and we find its roots, which look like this. So we have x plus any number, and then x plus another number. It's important to note that these have to equal 0. So how do we go from this quadratic to finding its roots? Well, in order to do that, we need to understand how we go from the root to the quadratic. So I'm a fan of using what is called the moon method. So we take x times x, which we know is x squared, x times z, which we know is xz, y times z, which is yz, and y times z, which is just yz. So, if we look at these two numbers here, we can actually simplify them down to z plus y in brackets x, and we've got a very familiar formula here. Looking at our original quadratic formula, we've got a to the x squared. Well, here we know that a is just going to be equal to 1 plus b times x plus c. Well, it's quite easy to see that this coefficient, which just means a number that you times your variable by, is going to equal z plus y. And this variable here, c, is just going to equal y times z, or z times y. It doesn't matter which way you do that. So let's give that a go. If I take x squared plus 7x plus 12 equals 0, I can find my factors nice and easy. So, this coefficient here, 7, has to be this number plus this number. And 12 has to be this number times this number. So let's look at the factors of 12. We have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. So we look at these and we say, do any of these add up to 7? 1 and 12 equals 13, so it can't be that. 2 and 6 equals 8, so it can't be that. 3 and 4 equals 7. So I know that these are my roots. Let's look at another quadratic. So if I take x squared plus x minus 12 equals 0, how can I do this? Now, as my c variable, remember the multiple, is a negative number, I need to remember some basic maths here. And that is that if you do a positive times by a negative, you're going to get a negative. Now this is important because it means I know that one of these has to be a plus and one of these has to be a minus, such that this number here is going to be negative. So again, looking at the factors of 12, I take 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. This time, I need to decide which of these two factors can be added together with one positive and one being negative to equal 1. So if I did 12 minus 1, I'd get 11. If I did 6 minus 2, I'd get 4. Or if I did 4 minus 3, I get 1. So I know that I need plus 4 and minus 3. Plus 4 minus 3. So for our third quadratic, let's look at x squared minus 7x plus 12. Now this looks very similar to the last one, except now we've got a negative for that b variable. In order to add two numbers together and get a negative number, you either need a negative number that's larger than the positive number, or two negative numbers. However, if we had one positive and one negative, then we know that this c variable would be negative, as we discovered in the last example. So we know that both of these numbers have to be negative, because if we times a negative by a negative, it equals a positive. So x minus and x minus. Our factors of 12, 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. So it's quite easy to see that this is almost the opposite of the first example that we gave, in which negative 3 plus negative 4 is going to equal negative 7. But negative 3 times negative 4 is going to equal 12. So actually, within our factors, we could also write negative 1, negative 12, negative 2, negative 6, and negative 3, negative 4. But as you may remember, our initial formula was a times x squared plus bx plus c. So what's happened to this a variable? Well, this is going to appear in quadratics like this: 2x squared plus 11x plus 12. Now we know that in order to calculate our c variable, it needs to be two factors of 12. So we take 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. But this extra 2 adds some complications. As you may have guessed, I'm going to use these two factors here. Now, when I put a 3 here and a 4 in here, look what happens. I get 2x squared plus 8x plus 3x plus 12, which is going to equal 2x squared plus 11x plus 12. So to recap, in scenario 1, c and b are both positive. Then we're looking at x plus and x plus. In scenario 2, c is negative. If c is negative, then we know we have an x plus and an x minus. And finally, if c is positive, but b is negative, then we know we have an x minus and an x minus. Hopefully we've given you the skills you need to start factorizing. This is one of those skills which gets better over time and with practice. But occasionally you're going to find that there are some quadratics you can't factorize. And when this occurs, we need to use the quadratic equation, which you'll learn about in our next video. That's all we have time for with today's video. But as always, if you want to learn more, visit Sherpa-online.com, the only place you should be going to find your own personal tutor to help you get ahead of your studies. You can pick from a whole range of tutors and see what others have to say about them. And then, when you found the right tutor for you, you can use a Sherpa Online classroom, which we use today, to have online lessons with your tutors, where you can speak face-to-face no matter where you are in the world. That's Sherpa-online.com. Visit it today.